In the early hours of the morning of the 14th of April 2013, a young woman walked up a side street in Woodstock. She was 23-year-old Nokupila Khumalo. She would soon be beaten and kicked to death. In a country plagued by gender-based violence, she is one of thousands of victims. Riva Steenkamp, Annie Devani, two of the most high-profile cases. But what makes the murder of Khumalo slightly different is that she was a sex worker, and women who sell sex are the easiest targets.
They are exposed, they're on the streets, there's a sense of vulnerability. They have to be hypervigilant, they have to look out for police harassment, and then a car pulling up and not knowing what's going to happen. They're the front line.
The shadowy streets frequented by sex workers are far removed from the rarefied spaces occupied by celebrities and the cultural elite. This is the world of artist Wilethu Mthethwa. Born in KwaZulu-Natal, Mthethwa is renowned for his monumental photographs and paintings of people struggling on the fringes of mainstream society.
There would be the township scene, the working class, the inventiveness of the recent city immigrant and conquering adversity, and also, I suppose, retrieving dignity through decoration.
In 1989, Mthethwa received a Fulbright scholarship to America, where he studied for his master's degree in art. He has lectured on photography and drawing at UCT, and since 1999, he has devoted himself full-time to his career. He has exhibited around the world, including the prestigious Jack Shaman Gallery in New York.
For most people in the art community, an international career is something that they want, and to see someone that had succeeded at that scale, I would say particularly in North America, particularly New York. If you look, New Yorker, New York Times, they've written about him.
Mthethwa's art sells for hundreds of thousands of rands, and he wields enormous respect and power. Yet this is the man charged with the murder of Nokupila Khumalo. He's currently out on 100,000 rand bail, and after several postponements at the request of his attorney, William Booth, Mthethwa will finally stand trial on the 10th of November, 18 months after the murder.
He has a constitutional right to a fair trial. While it may not be fast enough for our purposes, I think that the bigger issue is not necessarily around the fact that these murders took place, but why they are taking place.
So what do we know about the morning of April the 14th? The state alleges that Mthethwa left his luxury home in Devil's Peak in the early hours of the morning. He allegedly drove to Ravenscraig Road in Woodstock and stopped outside the Woodstock Industrial Building in his Porsche and got out of the car. He allegedly approached Khumalo and beat her to the ground, kicking and stomping on her. The brutal assault was captured on CCTV cameras in the building and recorded by the tracking device in his car. Khumalo's cause of death? Blunt trauma to her body. The art world has reacted with shock. They cannot reconcile the soft-spoken master of images with the violent murderer he is alleged to be.
A lot of opinions and judgments need to be put on hold until facts of the case are presented in open court and debated. But also, I think more importantly, that the life of this woman is also given substance.
She didn't deserve to die like that. But I already forgive him. I haven't got nothing to say to him. I just want to ask him that question. And say to him, why you do this ugly thing like that?
The Tollgate Industrial Centre in Upper Ravenscraig Road in Woodstock is the murder scene where Nokupila was punched and kicked to death. The crime was captured on these CCTV cameras outside the building.
I can't say anything, ma'am. I'm not allowed to say anything until the court is over.
Are you going to be there as a witness?
Sorry.
There were also eyewitnesses, and rumours about the motive are rife.
What I heard, it's that Ndombi, he went to that guy, he was his client. The guy was Ndombi's client for sex working, I understand. So maybe Ndombi stole that guy's drugs or money or whatever, I don't know.
In August this year, Special Assignment brought you the story of Nokupila. At the time, little was known about her, except that she was a sex worker. By contrast, the public has had access to intimate details of the lives and tragic deaths of Riva Steenkamp and Annie Devani, both victims of gender-based violence. In September, Paralympian champion Oscar Pistorius was found guilty of culpable homicide, and in October, he was sentenced to 5 years. The state is appealing the verdict.
Not guilty of robbing, kidnapping and murdering his wife. This is how Shrien Devani pleaded before Deputy Cape Judge President Jeanette Traverso. He also put
The trial of Shrien Devani, accused of masterminding the murder of his wife Annie under the guise of a hijacking in 2010, is currently running in Cape Town.
They mustn't allow this thing happen to other women. Even now we are here, we're supposed to be women from the various sides of South Africa to come and protest here.
For us, it's quite a relief that this matter is coming to finality insofar as the administrative process of ensuring that finally there is a trial.
Mthethwa will have his day in court on the 10th of November, a few weeks before the 16 days of activism against the abuse of women and children. According to a 2013 global review, 35% of women worldwide have experienced either physical or sexual violence. But this abuse goes largely unreported. And local research puts female homicide in South Africa at 5 times the global rate. But reports of crimes against sex workers are further stifled by stigma and shame.
If you have a sex worker who has been murdered and it's a headline, the collective consciousness, I believe, of the community is, oh, well, she's a sex worker, she deserves it. After all, she's a slut.
And several court judgments in the murder trials of sex workers have reflected the stigma. Take the conviction and sentencing of Paul Andrew Opperman, for example. In May this year, a Nelspruit court sentenced him to 12 years imprisonment, of which 5 were suspended for the murder of Mpumalanga sex worker Anita Tumela Loba. Opperman claimed that Loba died after having rough sex with him, but evidence presented at the Nelspruit High Court showed Loba was assaulted several times with a blunt object.
People view sex workers as second-class citizens, and I think it was Opperman who said that he hates women and he hates sex workers. So he felt that his stigma is justified against sex workers, and so his crime against sex workers is justified.
This second-class status is reinforced by the fact that sex work, although the oldest profession in the world, remains illegal in South Africa. Recently, the media carried reports of Cape Town cyclist and swimming coach Tim Osren justifying his assault of a domestic worker on the grounds that he thought she was a prostitute. On the 18th of October, he appeared in the Wynberg court, but since then, several sex workers have claimed to have been assaulted by him. He, in turn, has complained of the increase in crime due to the presence of sex workers in his neighborhood. So how do other countries deal with this problem?
In New Zealand, in 2003, they introduced the Prostitution Reform Act, which decriminalized sex work. They conducted a 5-year review to see what the impact of decriminalization has been. And what they found is that there was a better relationship between sex workers and police, that sex workers were able to report violence, that there was no increase in trafficking, and there was no significant increase in the amount of demand for sex workers. So there wasn't a significant increase in the amount of sex workers or brothels that have opened.
But decriminalization of sex workers is a contentious issue, one that has provoked furious and prolonged debate.
The South African Law Reform Commission has been looking at different models for the past 13 years, and in 2009 they released a discussion paper and proposed 4 models for people to comment on. Total criminalization, which is what we have today, partial criminalization, regulation, and then decriminalization. They have received many submissions from civil society and have failed to produce a report.
There has been a shift in attitude on the part of the criminal justice system to crimes against sex workers. Convicted double murderer Johannes de Jager, for example, was sentenced to 2 life terms for the rapes and murders of sex worker Hiltina Alexander and 16-year-old Charmaine Murray.
Are working within the context of Parliament, parliamentarians, MPs, ministries, and also in connection with our national program, which is spread throughout the country. There's a stronger sense of advocacy and collective sex work voices.
It motivates me to go back to my fellow colleagues and encouraging them to speak out and come out and lay charges.
But most crimes against sex workers tend to remain in the shadows, the victims nameless and faceless. And how does one even begin to put a face to the name of Nokuphila Khumalo in order to adequately tell her story when her own mother doesn't even have a photograph of her, except for the images she was shown by police after her daughter's murder?
I saw that photo. W was lying like this. But I saw it here. I said I want to look, and my husband, my boyfriend also look at it. I said, show me the other one. And he showed me really the other one in my place there. She showed me. And then Ntombi was lying like this.
Two months after her murder, on the 5th of June, Nokuphila Mudi Khumalo, also known as Ntombi, was laid to rest at the West End Cemetery in Kimberley. Even in her simple funeral program, there is no photograph of Ntombi. All we know is that she was born in Kimberley on the 11th of February, 1991.
The 11th February, I born Ntombi. Mandela was coming out like in the morning. She was hiding all the way in Kimberley.
She was the only girl among 3 brothers. Her father was a prison warder from Eastern Cape. But he abandoned her mother, who was 19 at the time, and she left Kimberley for Cape Town. Ntombi was 7 when she joined her mother and her mother's new boyfriend in Gugulethu.
Ntombi was never out. They said, Ntombi, go. They take Ntombi like the old child of that one.
They lived around the corner from Mzoli's place, Gugulethu's famous restaurant. Her mother worked there for many years, and ironically, this was one of the places frequented by Mtetwa, the artist accused of killing her.
She was dancing at Mzoli's place with that marimbas.
She attended Nchenga Primary School, where she excelled at sport. She was also a girl guide at the Amy Beale Foundation.
She was good. She was active, good in netball, good in athletics, also like dancing and the sing. She was active.
But life was tough for her mother.
She had a problem with the man that she was living with.
She said to me she wanted to be a social worker.
Why did she want to be a social worker?
When she saw how was my situation.
She was nice. You can ask her friends. She can ask who. She was a beautiful lady, and everything of hers was excellent.
So why did her life take such a sad turn?
It could be lack of educational opportunities. It could be aspirations towards doing something. It could be, I like selling sex. It could be because it's the only other option I have at this given point of time for income generating activities.
I don't know what was happening with Ntombi. It's just friends like Ntsikelelo. You see Ntsikelelo, how look Ntsikelelo?
Ntsikelelo was Ntombi's closest friend. They had both left school early, drawn to the bright lights and big dreams of the city. But they got caught up in a sordid world of sex and drugs. I went looking for Ntsikelelo, a transgender sex worker who calls herself CLEO. She operates in Woodstock's streets of sleaze.
Wanted to be dancers and singers, but we couldn't be in the location. From there, we went to party together, went parties together. So the parties, I'm the one who went to Cape Town, and danced Cape Town. So they followed me to Cape Town. She smoked a lot of drugs there, and then she got tiny and she was scared to come back home, so that their friends here, they were going to gossip about her, said she's got AIDS, blah 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 blah. Understand?
She was thin, and her hair like something bite him. There's no hair here. Here's hair here. There's no hair here. Here's hair here. And I said, Ntombi, you've got TB, or listen, you've got AIDS.
Ntombi had TB, but after she was cured, she returned to the streets without her mother's knowledge.
Her mom didn't know, and her mom was worried because she didn't know where she was.
To understand more about Ntombi's increasingly risky lifestyle, I made contact with another transgender sex worker. She didn't know Ntombi personally, but was familiar with some of the places she had frequented.
It's a place where most of the sex workers come and they buy their drugs, smoke there, but also mainly to take their clients there when they have clients to see to.
It is called the Stables, and you don't want to go walking through here at night. Mind you, during the day isn't such a smart idea either. It is a derelict property controlled by drug dealers, where the stench of feces and urine is overwhelming. But for some sex workers, it provides a roof over their heads.
Are you actually living here?
Yes, this is my home, and I make it my home.
And where do you entertain your clients?
My clients, I bring them here and see that this is a stable address now. If you come out of prison, you can give this address to the people who come and visit, check up on you.
This sex worker knew Ntombi.
I heard at Sweet that she was killed, and it was very shocked to me, and that made me realize that every day the risk is getting bigger for us out there. In most of the cases that sex workers die, or the transgenders die, as people would say, it's drug dealing.
Often sex workers rely on substances to do their work. Because of, the criminalized framework, it opens up the doors for vulnerable people to be exploited and abused.
Not only did Ntombi frequent this place, so did sexual predators such as Johannes de Jager.
Was a client.
Was he only into women or was he also into men?
To transgenders.
He was into transgenders.
In April this year, de Jager was found guilty of raping and strangling Cape Town prostitute Hiltina Alexander in 2008, and of killing and dismembering 16-year-old Mpumalanga resident Charmaine Marais in January 2013.
Had he been arrested and convicted for that murder swiftly, or soon after the initial murder, the 2013 murder would not have occurred.
In May 2008, he had picked up Alexander on a street corner in Parow. He subsequently beat, raped, sodomized and strangled her. Then he dumped her corpse in the bushes near an informal settlement.
People who target sex workers, number one, see sex workers as easy prey. Why do they see them as easy prey? Because there's something at the back of their head which says, well, sex workers, if for whatever reason something happens between me and the sex worker, and I knock her off or I rape her, the chances of me being found out are far, far less than if it were a person of respect.
One feature that straddles the spectrum of sex offenders is the ability to target vulnerability.
The mind of the predator is very, very clever, and they know how to manipulate processes. And sometimes what happens with the predator, there's a subtle manipulation that you go into a sex work space and you become familiar, and you gain however you gain it in that space, a level of trust.
But how does a mother who lost her child even before she was murdered move forward?
Mtetwa gonna rot in jail or whatever she gonna do, but I give him to God. I forgive him. I give him to God.
Ntombi's story, like those of so many sex workers, resembles the narratives painted and photographed by Mtetwa, the artist charged with her murder. Pictures of faces on the fringes, sometimes reflecting defiance, sometimes dignity, and always the desire for something better. What did Ntombi look like?
She was very beautiful girl. She looked like Sammy. They're in the bold and the beautiful.
Tell me what she looked like.
She was... Ntombi was coffee color. And I've got a beautiful nose, a father's nose. And my ears.
Until Ntombi's story is fully told, what picture will her mother keep in her head?
There's a picture I quit my mind when Ntombi was looking like a skeleton that time. She was looking like a skeleton.